Good evening, my dear channel followers. English with Mr. Aziz Zuhair from A to Z. You are welcome to a new video. Tonight we are going to see types of sentences. As you know, sentences are of great importance in building paragraphs, and therefore a student should vary his sentences or her sentences. In this case, the moment they are important to structure a sentence is conditional upon some criteria. First of all, the sentence should be meaningful. And number two, the thought should be complete. And we should not forget also that any sentence should be or should have two things. First of all, it must begin with a capitalized letter, and it should end with a full stop. So let's try to concentrate on these types. And the first type is simple sentence. When I speak about simple sentence, I have said that it should have a complete thought. And of course, it should be meaningful. Number one, they travel abroad every summer. Structurally speaking, it is complete. All the components that this sentence requires, they are here. So in this, if we want to analyze the first sentence, we have they as a subject. And then the predicate, it begins from travel till summer. Which means here the two components, they are present, subject and the verb. Number two, some youngsters smoke a lot. So the same here, some youngsters as a subject, and the predicate is smoke a lot. This predicate begins with the verb to smoke. Number three, stop. So even if there is just one word here, but we consider it a sentence. First of all, where is the subject? The subject is implicit because this is the imperative. And you know, concerning the imperative, the subject is always implicit. It is understood because the message is sent to the addressee, and there is no addressee here, but it is understood that we are talking about you. So the subject, we don't have it, and we have just the verb. And we consider it a sentence because there is a complete thought, and structurally speaking, we know that this verb is intransitive. That's why it is meaningful and the idea that is expressed here is complete. So a simple sentence can have subject and a predicate. And if we want to add another example, we can say she cooks and bakes. So this sentence is itself a simple sentence. It is made of compound verbs, which means the predicate has two verbs here, coordinated to each other through and we have one subject. And in this case, it is a simple sentence. We are not going to consider it something else. The answer, we are going to see it with another type. So this sentence is simple. Now let's move to compound sentence. A compound sentence has other features. So a compound sentence requires two clauses. And the two clauses, they can be linked to each other through a coordinate conjunction, which is number one, this one. And it can be linked, the two clauses can be linked to each other through a conjunctive adverb or just punctuation. So we have three cases here. We are not going to talk about the two till the end. Okay, so we have three cases. The student worked hard last year, but, and here, even if you have a coordinate conjunction, you must have a subject after it. And when there is a subject after the coordinate conjunction, we must put a comma before the coordinating conjunction. The first clause is the student worked hard last year. This is the first clause. The second clause is he did not have good marks. So the two clauses, both of them, they are independent. Each one can stand by itself. The same example with however. So this is number one, coordinating conjunction. This one, conjunctive adverb. And it needs a semicolon before and a comma after. And this sentence is made up of two clauses. The first one, from the student till year, and second one, from he till marks. Number three, we don't have any conjunction. We have just punctuation, especially semicolon. So it is made of two independent clauses. Now, let's move to number four. Be happy and work hard. This one is a compound sentence. Maybe some of you are going to tell me, what is the subject that should be after and? The answer is simple, is that this is an imperative sentence. And I have said the subject is implicit. It is hidden. And it is implicit and understood. Which means the first clause is be happy. It stands by itself. The second clause, work hard. So this is a compound sentence because it is made of two independent clauses. The final sentence is you should be hopeful and you should work hard. This one is similar to the first one. We have a coordinating conjunction and therefore it should be preceded by a comma because the subject comes after this coordinating conjunction. So a compound sentence is a sentence that is made up of two independent clauses linked to each other through a coordinating conjunction, through a conjunctive adverb, and through punctuation only, especially semicolon. Complex sentence. When we speak about a complex sentence, number one, something very important, you must have it. You must have at least one dependent clause. Dependent. That is to say, it cannot stand by itself. And at the same time, you must have an independent clause. Let's try to analyze each sentence by itself. We try to convince him this is independent because the meaning exists, and at the same time the thought is complete. We try to convince him. The subordinate conjunction is because. So the clause that comes directly after the subordinate conjunction, this is dependent clause. So this sentence, number one, it's a complex sentence because it is made up of one independent and another dependent clause. Concerning the first sentence and second sentence, both of them we have because. But because in the middle, when it takes a medial possession, don't use a comma. But when we begin with subordinate conjunction, in general, we must put a comma after the dependent clause. So, because I worked hard last year, this is dependent. I worked hard last year. The independent is I got good marks. So, this is a complex sentence. It consists of one which is dependent and one which is independent. The same with if. He has enough money, dependent. He can buy a car, independent. However, the first one that we have seen with compound sentence is not this one. This one is a subordinate conjunction. How shall we know? Because first of all, it takes a medial, an initial possession, and it must be followed by an adjective. But this one, no. Punctuation, semicolon, comma. You see? So this is the difference. This is a conjunctive adverb, but this one is a subordinate conjunction. The same with although. Although he practices sport, so he practices sport dependent. He does not lose weight, this is independent. Now with a relative adverb, you know what, that we have three relative adverbs. Where refers to place, when refers to time, and why refers to reason. So here we have Brahim lives where we often meet him. So this is a relative adverb. Pay attention to the name. Relative adverb. It is related to the lecture or to the chapter of adjective clauses. We often meet him. This is dependent because it comes directly after the first one. Brahim lives. This is the independent. And maybe you are going to tell me the sentence is not completed. Brahim lives there. If I take this one out and replace it, I'm going to use Brahim lives there. So independent, the clause that comes after the relative adverb, this is dependent. Brahim lives in street Wehran, where we often meet him. So this one now, where completely so let me try to speak about the first sentence. Brahim lives where we often meet him. So this is, I'm sorry, not a relative adverb. Okay, because when we speak about a relative adverb, we need an antecedent. We need the antecedent, like this one. Am I clear? So where here refers to street Wehran. So this is a relative adverb, this one. Okay, this one is a relative adverb, but this one is not a relative adverb. Because if we take where we often meet him, we can replace it just with there. The other one, she invited Wazani, who is the dean of the university. So who is a relative pronoun. It refers to the antecedent Wazani, and therefore she invited Wazani is independent, is the dean of the university. This is dependent. Okay, so let me recapitulate just the three. This is an adverbial clause, especially where we often meet him. This is an adverbial clause. The second one, where we often meet him, this is an adjective clause, because we have the antecedent. Here we don't have any antecedent. And the third one is an adjective clause, because it refers, who directly refers to Wazani. The other one, that Morocco is the land of peace, is globally believed. So that as a subordinate conjunction. And this one is a noun clause. This one is a noun clause. It is headed, it is initiated, or it begins with that. So this is dependent. That Morocco is the land of peace. Is globally believed. This is the independent. Pay attention to noun clauses. It seems to you that any sentence that you have is not complete. But in this case, is globally is independent. And therefore, how shall I know? I can take out this dependent clause and I replace it with it is globally believed, or this is globally believed. Even if it is not written, we can take out the dependent clause and replace it. We use just it or that. This is how you should know. Now it is globally believed that Morocco, the same sentence, but this one after, or we call it subject after it. We have this it. So this is the dependent. Morocco is the land of peace. And the subordinate conjunction is that. It is globally believed. This is what we call the independent. So in all such examples, we have just one dependent and one independent. We have either relative pronoun, relative adverb, or a subordinate conjunction, like the case of because, if, however, although, the first were, this one. So these are all of them related to adverbial clauses. These two related to adjective clauses. And this one to the two concerning noun clauses. Now we move to the last one, and I want you to pay attention here. working hard last year, I got good marks. We call this one a participial phrase. But what kind of participial phrase? Here we speak about participial phrase with an adverbial function. Why am I going to say adverbial function? Simply because this participial phrase originates, it emanates and comes out of an adverbial clause. To change it, we are going to say because I worked hard last year, because I worked hard last year, I got good marks. So here you have the subordinate conjunction, which is because, which means here participial phrase with an adverbial function. It comes from an adverbial clause and it expresses cause. Or we may say another one, when I worked hard last year, I got good marks, referring to time. So don't forget, participial phrase with an adverbial function, when it is in an initial possession, time and cause are interchangeable, no problem. This is what I have said. When I worked hard last year, or because I worked hard last year. Okay? That's why we say this is the dependent working hard last year. And maybe some are going to say this is not a clause. Yes, it is not a clause, it is a participial phrase, but it originates from an adverbial clause. When I say when I worked or because I worked. We move to the last one. She invited Mr. Wazani, being the dean of the university. So this is a participial phrase, but it takes a final possession. And in this case, it has what we call antecedent. If I want to change it, she invited Mr. Wazani, who is the dean of the university. So this one we call it a participial phrase with an adjectival function. Why? Because it originates from an adjective clause. And therefore we say, who is the dean of the university. So don't forget the complex sentence. You should all the time pay attention to 4 features: adjective clause, adverbial clause, noun clause, and participial phrase. The last one, compound complex sentence. In this one, at least, let me give you the definition, what you should find. At least one independent. I'm sorry. Yes. And one dependent. At least one independent. Concerning the dependent clauses, we don't care. Millions, no problem. And you must have a coordinating conjunction. So let's analyze this sentence. We try to come back by plane. This is independent. The subordinate conjunction is although. It was foggy, it is dependent. Till now, we have one independent and one dependent. The coordinating conjunction is this one. No problem. Our mother did not approve of this decision. Independent. So the total number is 2 independent clauses and 1 dependent clause and CC, coordinating conjunction. So this is a compound complex sentence. When I say at least one independent, means you must have an independent. And you can have 2 and 3, no problem. Second one, children who have studied a foreign language become. So, who have studied a foreign language, this is the dependent. Why? Because it is related to who. And this is an adjective clause. Become more open. This is what we should say. Children become more open. So this is independent. From children to open, we have children become more open, independent, have studied a foreign language, dependent. This is the coordinating conjunction so. They express more positive attitude towards the culture. This is independent. So till here we have two independent clauses and one dependent clause associated with the language from here till here. This is itself participial phrase. How shall I know? I would say towards the culture which is. So here relative pronoun, as I have said, this is a participial phrase with an adjectival function. Because here we have the omission of which is. And don't forget that participial phrase emanates from the adjective clause. So till here we have two independent, two dependent. And the last one, they are studying. This is dependent. How shall I know? In this here, I should have language which they are studying. Which they are studying. So the total number is 3 dependent clauses, 2 independent clauses, 1 coordinating conjunction, therefore compound complex sentence. And students, you should pay attention here. The day of the exam you have a lot of tricks related to such phrases like this. So all the time try to say the culture. What's the link between culture and associated? Towards the culture which is. And here language they. We should not have two nouns. So language which they are studying. The last example. Most people believe dream interpretation is an ancient art. So most people believe. This is independent. Dream interpretation is an ancient art. So this is dependent. Why? Because here we have that and it is omitted. Most people believe that dream. So here it is omitted. And if it is omitted, this is the dependent clause. Coordinating conjunction. So actual science strives to create a collective understanding of till here. So this one, independent. So till now we have 2 independent clauses and 1 dependent clause. What we all see on a nightly basis, this is dependent. Till now we have 2 independent clauses, 2 dependent clauses, and this is number 3, subordinate conjunction. It is not always crystal clear. So this is another dependent clause because this one comes after the subordinate conjunction, which is though. In this case, we have 2 independent clauses, 3 dependent clauses. Compound complex sentence. Am I clear? So the video of tonight is over. See you in another video. Thanks for watching.